And Prime Minister Modi and Canadian Prime Minister Carney held key talks at the G7 summit. Canada to now appoint high commissioners again. Canadian Prime Minister said that they discussed law enforcement with each other, and he also added that the talks were on direct cooperation with India. So that's the big update that is coming in. All eyes were on the bilateral meeting between India and Canada, and Prime Minister Modi and Canadian Prime Minister Carney did hold key talks at the G7 summit, where they discussed law enforcement, and Canada will now appoint high commissioners once again. Remember, the ties between the two nations went downhill over Hardeep Singh Nijjar's killing, but now Canada has decided to appoint high commissioners once again, and Carney said that the talks were on direct cooperation with India.
Prime Minister, it's a great honor to host you at the G7. India has been coming to the G7, I believe, since 2018 in Biarritz with our French partners, and it's a testament to the importance of your country, to your leadership, and to the importance of the issues that we look to tackle together, from energy security, from the energy transition that you're helping to lead, to the future of artificial intelligence, to the fight that we have against transnational repression, against terrorism, against other factors, and the work that we can do together. And it is my great honor to have you here. I enjoyed your intervention just now, and we look forward to our discussion.
Excellency, मैं आपका बहुत-बहुत आभारी हूँ कि आपने G7 में भारत को निमंत्रित किया, और मेरा भी सौभाग्य है कि मुझे 2015 के बाद फिर से एक बार कनाडा की धरती पर आकर के कनाडा के लोगों के साथ जुड़ने का एक अवसर मिला है। भारत दुनिया की सबसे बड़ा लोकतांत्रिक देश है। पिछले दिनों G20 समिट की अध्यक्षता के रूप में भारत ने विश्व के लिए अनेक उपकारक ऐसे इनिशिएटिव लिए हैं। आज G7 के अंदर G20 में भारत ने जो मजबूत नींव रखी है, उसको एक प्रकार से नए स्वरूप में G7 में उसके एग्जीक्यूशन की दिशा में ले जाने में एक बहुत बड़ा अवसर है, और भारत इस अवसर का उपयोग ग्लोबल गुड के लिए करने के लिए हमेशा इच्छुक रहा है, आगे भी इच्छुक रहेगा। भारत और कनाडा के संबंध अनेक प्रकार से बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण है। कनाडा की अनेक कंपनियों का भारत में निवेश है। भारत के लोगों का भी कनाडा की धरती पर बहुत बड़ा निवेश है। लोकतांत्रिक मूल्यों को समर्पित कनाडा और भारत मिलकर के लोकतंत्र को मजबूत करना होगा, मानवता को मजबूत करना होगा, हमारे रिसोर्सेज का ऑप्टिमम यूटिलाइजेशन कर करके मानव जात के कल्याण के काम में कैसे ला सकते हैं, उस दिशा में हम प्रयास करते रहेंगे। और मुझे विश्वास है कि प्रधानमंत्री जी के चुनाव के बाद मुझे पहली बार मिलने का मौका मिला है, तो इस चुनाव के भव्य विजय के लिए भी मैं उनको बधाई देता हूं, और आने वाले कालखंड में उनके साथ भारत और कनाडा मिलकर के अनेक क्षेत्रों में प्रगति करेंगे। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
And Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney responded to India Today's question. The Canadian Prime Minister hailed Prime Minister Modi's involvement at the G7 summit. He said that they both discussed law enforcement, and he also added that the talks were on the direct cooperation with India.
Good evening, Prime Minister. My name is Gaurav Sawant. I work for India Today in Delhi. Your meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, how would you describe that? And what are concrete steps that you and the Prime Minister of India discussed to take this relationship forward, that it reaches its true potential, sir?
Well, I think the several things, if I may say. I would say the meeting, the fact of the meeting. Let me say a few things. First, just in terms of Prime Minister Modi's attendance at the G7. Prime Minister Modi has attended every G7 since 2018. That is a reflection of the size of the Indian economy, the dynamism of the Indian economy, Indian technology, the leadership position India plays in a host of venues from G20 and beyond. So as chair of the G7, hosting the Prime Minister in that context is entirely natural, entirely consistent. I fully expect the Prime Minister of India will be in attendance at the G7 next year, for example, in France. First thing. Secondly, in terms of the bilateral relationship, which is your question, I think the meeting today was important, but I would describe it as foundational, as a necessary first step, an exchange of views, frank, open exchange of views around law enforcement, transnational repression as two examples, an agreement to provide the necessary foundations to begin to rebuild a relationship based on mutual respect, sovereignty, trust. And that begins with what was agreed, you asked for concrete, which is that we will move to appoint high commissioners again. And let me just finish by putting that in context, which is there are very deep ties of people and businesses between Canada and India. It's well known. It's part of your point about where the relationship could go. And they are not served at present by consular services, in effect, certainly by high commissioners. And it's necessary to have that level of service as a basis on which to build out, again, in the context of respect for sovereignty and to begin to realize the potential of the relationship. And we will, we're both committed to work towards that, but there's a lot of work that will need to be done.
Now, my colleague Gaurav Sawant, who is in Canada tracking the G7 summit, is joining us. Gaurav, the much-awaited bilateral between India and Canada was held. And tell us what all was discussed, and is this the sign of India-Canada relationship reset?
It's the first signal that India and Canada relationship is now returning on an even keel. India and Canada are to appoint high commissioners in each other's country once again. Remember, after investigations were ordered in the Nijjar killing, India had withdrawn our High Commissioner and had sent back the Canadian High Commissioner and a very large number of diplomatic staff from each other's High Commissions. However, after the meeting between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Canadian Prime Minister Carney, which was described as a very positive meeting, a decision has now been taken that the High Commissioners and High Commission staff will be restored. And that's just the first step. I put that question to Mike Carney on his meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and what were key result areas and what were outcomes of that meeting. So he said this was a very important foundational meeting between India and Canada. Both sides understood each other, both sides appreciate each other's points of view, and now will work together to ensure that that relationship reaches its true potential. So Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Canada after a gap of 10 years, he'd last come in 2015 when Canada became India's strategic partner, and now again in 2025. The total focus of both the countries now is to ensure that this relationship achieves its potentials. Any concerns that each country has, they are adequately addressed, especially on issues of law and order, on transborder terrorism. These are issues that both countries will address.